You are listening to the Billy Dees Podcast.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast. Today, we have an interview for you. On the studio line with me is Antoinette Berrafato. How are you doing? So glad you are here.
Hi, Bill. Good to be here with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh, of course. I'm excited about this interview. I'm excited about all our guests, of course, but I got to know you a little bit on TikTok, and we can talk about that. But boy, you bring a lot of good information out into the world. And as a matter of fact, just a small thing here. We're going to talk about some things today about feeling good and in recovery and things like that. And I always just want to put out there that this isn't a substitute for personalized medical care. Okay, this is something that we talk about to bring awareness, something you can ask about with your provider, something you can research yourself. It's good general information. But this woman here has got quite the background. She's got quite the background. She is a U.S. Army veteran who served 11 years as an air assault qualified combat medic. In 2014, a traumatic brain injury, spinal damage, and severe PTSD left her dependent on a walker, a service dog, and a full-time caregiver. Today, she is a sponsored adventure athlete who traded that walker for white walker kayaks and ice fishing. She turned her recovery into a framework she shares with audiences worldwide. She brings the credentials to the story for sure. Functional medicine and 11 years of real-world experience practicing in these fields. She was a health columnist at Cultures magazine, which has over 1.5 million readers in 200 countries. And she's a motivational speaker, resilience life coach, and host of the New Normal Big Life podcast, Wellness, Longevity, and Holistic Health podcast with 10,000 listeners across 10 platforms and 100 episodes in. So, yeah, you're really into the digital media thing. You're on TikTok and all that stuff. Do you like it? I mean, obviously you do.
I am actually an introvert. I'm still a health and wellness columnist at Cultures magazine. And my preference is to write an article, send it out into the ether digitally and in print and, for Cultures and other magazines that I write for, and then just go off and live my life. But unfortunately, you have to have a social media presence.
Yes.
I'm an ambivert, so I'm naturally introverted and naturally extroverted, but decidedly more naturally introverted than extroverted. So I find that social media, it's good that it forces me out of my shell, but it's also, not my comfort zone, but I'm trying to be more comfortable with it.
Well, because
I really love people. So that's the benefit of it. I get to connect with people all over the world, and I like people. I like hearing their stories and interacting with them. So there's good and a downside.
Yeah, sure. Well, you have that podcast, that audio voice. I mean, you definitely got that. So, that's all good.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Obviously, this started with the military. What attracted you to that type of service?
I come from a family with a long tradition of military service. In fact, all of my uncles on both my mother's side and my father's side, and including my father, they didn't wait to be drafted. They saw that their country needed them and signed up. They are very patriotic. I come from a very patriotic family, and my dad and his twin brother served in the Navy together during World War II. And then he served in the Army with his twin brother again during the Korean conflict. And then later I served in the real MASH unit. If you've ever seen the show or the movies, MASH, I was in the real 65th Medical Detachment in Pyeongtaek, Korea, as a medic. So, it's a full circle. A lot of people think that daddy's favorite joined the army because she wanted to be like daddy. But my father and my mother's brother also reminded them that at 5 years old, I declared I was going to join the army, and I did. So.
Yes. Well, obviously that service means the world. My father, he's passed away years ago, but, he was a veteran. His brother was killed in combat. I don't think he ever I don't think he ever, I never met his brother, but his, the attitude that he had, the PTSD from all of that, and he had a violent childhood as well. So, he really had, a lot of things that could go wrong. But in his final days, despite all the hardship that he went through, it was still the most important thing to him. He said, make sure I get a flag on Memorial Day. That was that never left, even with all that. My dad was kind of a bitter man, largely because of the loss that he suffered, with the service, and that his brother, which was the only really family that he had. But like I said, it didn't change his patriotism or his loyalty to the service. So I think that's a consistent that's almost always there. I would say I've talked to very few veterans who regret their service, even no matter what they've been through. Is that pretty much the case always?
I would say the majority of veterans that I know, and I know a lot of veterans because I do a lot of volunteer work in the veteran community, and I would say that is the case. What I want people to know about veterans is that most of us join the military not because we are warlike people, but we see that we have a unique set of skills, one of which is bravery. And bravery just means that you are willing to be afraid and do it anyway. That's one of the skills, but also this sort of protective nature. And so for me and for a lot of veterans I know, your country announces that there is some internal or external threat, and they need people to protect the rest of the citizens, and they ask for volunteers or draft you into service. And so the sort of mentality that I had going in is that I am willing to put my life on the line to stand in the gap between danger and my fellow country folk, whether I like them or not, whether I know them or not, whether we see the world in the same way or not. You are my people, and I'm willing to put my life on the line to protect you. And from my experience in interacting with other veterans, that's what most of us think. There are some who come in just for the money for college or just for the opportunity to leave where they came from, or the opportunity to learn a skill. But a lot of people come in with the ideal of, I want to stand in the gap between my nation and danger.
Yes. Speaking of danger, this is kind of what began you on your journey in terms of healing. You sustained a brain injury. You hear again, whatever's relevant about those details that you would like to share is fine. But I think what is important, the PTSD that comes with it, or any type of trauma event. Trauma is something that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of the best way to describe it is when you have a threatening situation, you go kind of like into fight or flight. But you're so triggered by that trauma that your brain can't escape that. It's always on edge. It's always, ready to fight or ready to flee. And you're in that state. Is that kind of the right way to describe trauma?
Well, I'd like to back it up a little bit.
Sure.
So every human being goes through trauma, little t trauma, big T trauma.
Yes.
That's the human condition. None of us can escape that, right? Mm-hmm. But what happens to you after the traumatic event, your ability to have time and space to process what happened to you, how you feel about it, and how you can move forward, and then also having support around you during or after the trauma is what determines whether or not you will be traumatized by that trauma and experience post-traumatic distress.
Mm-hmm.
So you can experience a big trauma, a huge trauma, and have all of the time, space, and support you need to process that and move past it. Or you can experience even a little trauma and then get stuck in the fight or flight mode because you never feel safe.
Yes.
So that really is the challenge of all of us, is being able to regain your internal feelings of I am safe.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Now, in your case, you had physical injuries in addition to psychological ones. You had the combination of both. So your body had to heal, your mind had to heal. How daunting was that when you were first starting your recovery journey? Like you said, you were dependent on caregivers and everything. So how did the world seem at that? How did your future seem at that time?
Well, brain injuries are interesting because two people can experience a brain injury and almost identical. For example, two people are in a car accident. They both have a traumatic brain injury as a result of it in the same accident.
Mm-hmm.
And one person had a horrific impact that looked like it was going to end their life, but it did not. That person might bounce back and have nearly full recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Yet a person who had a smaller impact to their brain might be completely debilitated because a lot of things influence that recovery process. And so with traumatic brain injury, lots of things influence how you feel, how your brain works on an ongoing basis, even on a daily basis. So the initial recovery went pretty well. And I was able to eventually go back to my job, and I noticed some changes. It was harder to do my job. It was harder physically because I also broke my back. But then over time, the allopathic, the traditional treatment of my health challenges, the brain injury, the chronic pain, the arthritis, the way that the protocols were used by the doctors and specialists that I saw made me sicker.
Mm.
So sick to the point that it nearly killed me 3 times. And at my worst, I was using a walker, a service dog, and a full-time caregiver, looking down on my body, feeling as though my soul had left my body. My service dog refused to leave my side.
Mm-hmm.
She was looking at me with these wide eyes and whining. She wouldn't eat. She wouldn't go to the bathroom. She didn't take water. She wouldn't leave my side. It was as if she was saying to me, "You're going to pass. I know this is happening, and I don't want you to do it alone."
Mm.
Sorry.
No, it's,
But in that moment, I wasn't afraid. I didn't tell my caregiver, "We need to go to the emergency room immediately." What I said to myself was, "I think these are my last hours on earth. And comparatively speaking, I've had a pretty good life. You know, I got to grow up in an upper middle income family in America, which all of the good things that comes of that. I have loved, I've been loved, I've traveled the world, I've known success. Okay, God, this is it. Here I come. I know I've been a good person and lived a good life and been a good Christian. I'm ready for what happens next. But if you give me one more day, I'm going to figure out why I'm so sick, and I'm going to turn around and help other people." And that has been my mission since recovering my good health.
mm-hmm.
From my writing to my public speaking to the podcast, that is my mission. I don't want anyone else to go through what I went through.
Mm-hmm. So the next question then, being, in that position where you think this might be it, what was the first thing that came into your mind? What was the first step you took toward recovery? Where do you even begin in that situation?
I woke up the next morning, and for the first time in 18 months, I could reach for my walker on my own, get it, and go use the bathroom without help, right? Mm-hmm. First time in 18 months. Nothing else changed except acceptance of this is my life. I'm not ready for it to be over, but if it is, thank you for the life I've had. Mm-hmm. If you give me more time, I'm going to help people. That's the only things that have changed. And so the very next thing that I did was I decided that today is the first day of my new normal. My old life is never coming back. I'm never going to get that back. But I can create a new normal, and it can still be a big life. And then I sat down to write about what that life would be like. Mm-hmm. And there's a whole process and framework that's super simple that I'd love to share if there's time.
Absolutely. There's as much time as you need.
Okay. For that. Well, the first step is if you're not satisfied with your life today, whether it's your work life, your school life, your family life, your health, whatever it is, whatever areas of dissatisfaction, ask yourself this one question. If I did not have to worry about how I was going to pay for it, how I would have the education to do it, how I would have the support to do the things that I want to do, how would you live your life? What would you do for work, for pleasure? What kinds of people would you have surrounding you? Not what they would do for a living or how they would look, but the characteristics of the people that surround you. I wrote about all those things. I put it in a spreadsheet because I'm an MBA. We love spreadsheets. Mm-hmm. But if I had it to do it all over again, I would have handwritten it. The reason is when you handwrite something, especially a goal, you're more likely to follow through with it and achieve it. So anyone at any stage, it doesn't matter if you're 8, 18, 28, or 80, you can sit down today and decide, what will my new normal be like? Because today, I don't like my life. Mm-hmm. And then tomorrow, after you have your list, you wake up and you do one thing to work towards that goal. So remember, I made my list. I envisioned my new life. I woke up the next day and I began living my life as if I was already in that new life. And my new life was, I'm a full-time writer. I live in a cabin in the woods. I have a person who also loves adventure as much as I do. To be the man in my life living with me. And I woke up every day not knowing how any of those things were going to come to fruition, still using my walker and my service dog and my full-time caregiver. But every day I did one more additional thing towards that new life.
When you get to the point, like you said, the medication you didn't feel that it was anything beneficial, and the fact it might have been causing you problems. I think it's a scary thing because we get psychologically dependent on the idea of, well, I need this medication to at least be as good as I am. Okay. And then to take that step and say, I'm going to try something different. To me, that seems like a very brave thing to do. Something that am I wrong? Or when did it come to that? How did you handle it?
That's a really good question. What I think, Bill, is that it was more courageous to do something different for sure than it was to keep doing what I was doing. But what I was doing was killing me. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, I didn't have a choice. I either had to accept that my life was going to end prematurely, or I was going to have to at least try to do something different to prolong my life and have a good life. And so I chose empowerment. I chose to take my life back into my own hands. And that's why my message is you have to take back your health from chronic illness, because your doctors can't save you. Your friends can't save you. Your family can't save you. Only you can save you. But, and here's the big part, you have to become the pilot. Your doctor, your friends, your family, your support network, they are your co-pilots. Mm-hmm. Where I was before was the doctor was a pilot because I thought they knew better than I do, even though I have a clinical background. I trusted the advice and the protocols they were giving me. Mm-hmm. But the reality is I know my body better than anyone does because I live in it 24/7, 365 for X number of years, right? And I will share with you, I am a year and a half away from being 60 years old, but every sponsor who has come to me in the past 6 years has thought I was 35. Today, they still think I'm 35, new sponsors, because outwardly, my energy, my vitality is of a younger person. And what's amazing is that on the inside, I feel 35 or 40. Okay. And people assume that I'm 35 or 40. It's what I'm projecting into the world because that's how I feel internally. But if you look at photos of me even 7 years ago, you look younger now. And I didn't realize it until my husband said, you look younger now than you did 7 years ago. And my friends that I went to high school, one of them recently contacted me and said, my daughter thought you were the daughter of someone I went to high school with. Wow. And I had to tell her that you and I are the same age. And she said, there's no way. So here's why I say this. Because if it is possible for me to reverse all of these very serious health challenges and to go from 20 medications a day, every day, to 0 medications at almost 60 years old, that's pretty unheard of, but hundreds of thousands of people are doing it. You don't hear about it because you're stuck in the sick care system. Mm-hmm.
That's a good way to put it. I've heard it expressed that way a lot of times. Okay, so the question then becomes, what did you do in terms of, okay, it's one thing to psychologically take, control. I'm the pilot. You feel really good about yourself. But that's only part of it. I'm guessing there has to be ways that you nourished your body differently or something that you did. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, the first thing is that you have to understand that chronic illness is never one thing. So my cognitive decline, where I went from, I'm not saying this to brag, I'm saying this to make a point.
Sure,
I have a higher than average IQ. Mm-hmm. And I went from someone who has a higher than average IQ to someone who could not remember how to start a car, to use a can opener, to formulate the words either in writing or verbally. How do I start a car? How do I use a can opener? How do you open a can of tuna fish? Mm-hmm. I couldn't do that in 2014. That's why I had to have a caregiver. I couldn't remember things I have been doing for years. I was a tech CEO and I lost my job because of it. Because I woke up one day and I could hardly walk. I couldn't remember passwords, driving, any of those things. What I learned was that chronic illness is systemic. So, for example, by the time your doctor diagnoses that you have, high blood sugar, and then they begin treating you for pre-diabetes, for example, and you're taking your medication, the symptoms are getting better, you're starting to feel better, and then your doctor diagnoses you with high blood pressure. And then you take a medication for that. And then your doctor diagnoses you with lymphedema and you take some medication for that. And then next thing you know, you're on 10 medications and you feel like you're playing whack-a-mole. A disease or diagnosis pops up, you whack it down, but you're not really getting substantially any better. You're just masking the symptoms of each disease. So you feel slightly better and then another one pops up. And that's because your entire body is sick. And it's sending you messages. And the first message was diabetes. The next message was high blood pressure. The next message is lymphedema. The next message might be a heart attack or stroke. Mm-hmm. But when you start blocking out those messages and you're not treating any of the root cause being pathogens like viruses, parasites, bacteria, fungi, toxins, when you don't eliminate the root cause of what's making you sick, you just get another sickness and another sickness and another sickness until it almost takes your life like it did with me.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. This regimen that you're on, is it herbs? Is it just diet, exercise? What just generally speaking? I know it might vary, but what's the mix?
So here's what every human being needs to be healthy.
Okay.
You need your organs to function properly. So the organs that fight off disease, infection, viruses, bacteria, parasites, etc. You need those organs to work properly because our bodies have an innate ability to heal itself.
Okay.
It's built in. But when our organs are not working properly because the environment inside our body has changed, and it's changed because of those pathogens I talked about, viruses, fungi, bacteria, parasites, and toxins. So when you change the internal environment, your organs can start to function better. They can start to do their job. So your immune system starts fighting off pathogens. Your kidneys, liver, gallbladder, and your lymphatic system can flush it out, and good health is restored. So that's what I did. And it's a combination of things. So here are the things that every human being needs to do to be healthy. All right. Eliminate inflammation. Eliminate all those pathogens that we just talked about. You can do a lot of it naturally. You might need some medications that your doctor can help you with. But a lot of what your body needs has been stripped out of our diets.
Yeah.
It's been stripped out of the soil that our food is grown from. It's been stripped out of the water that we need. So your body is going to need vitamins, minerals, and herbs to help boost your ability to fight off the things that have disrupted your internal system.
Mm-hmm.
Then your organs will heal and they can do their jobs. You need half your body weight in ounces of water every day. So if you weigh 150 pounds, you need 75 ounces at a minimum of water every day. More if you're super active or live in a very hot climate.
Yeah.
You need deep restorative sleep because that's where your body does most of its healing. You need face-to-face connections with other human beings because we need each other to thrive. Okay. We don't need other humans to survive, but we need each other to thrive. And you need to move your body.
Mm-hmm.
You do those things and you will get better. Now, how do you do those things? That's why I built a whole podcast with the top MDs from around the world, functional medicine doctors, naturopaths, innovators, and researchers to tell you specifically. I don't bring anyone on to just talk about how wonderful they are and their journey to good health. I bring them on to teach you the things that I just talked about at a deeper level.
One of the things that, you and I are about the same age. I'm just a couple of years older than you are. Okay. And for the most part, I've been lucky, I think. Grandpa in particular passed along some really good genes to me. He died in 89 with a body that Arnold Schwarzenegger had.
Wow.
Of course, that generation, he worked on the railroad his whole life. And that was before a lot of the laws about how much you can lift and everything. So he walked, I don't know how many miles every day. And people always talk about their grandparents. Well, it's funny because back then my grandparents could eat anything. And but they weren't sedentary like we are now. He was out and he'd work all day on the railroad and come home, work in the backyard, and he used those choppers for the hedges, and he would just go, I'd use them for 5 minutes. Felt like my arms were going to fall off. But those individuals, they had that, that lifestyle that's completely different now, but nonetheless, he did have good genes. For my age, I'm still over 6 feet tall. I've still retained a lot of my muscle mass, things like that. But I do feel a change. And one of the things that I fear, and this is going to sound, like macho or, but I still feel like when I'm crossing a parking lot and somebody's converging my path, I still feel most of the time, if this person messes with me, I can kick their ass. And one of the things that I'm afraid of that day when I'm looking around and running to my car because I'm afraid, because I'm helpless. And I see some of those older folks, at the grocery store that can just barely lift their grocery bags into the car. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you're next. I hear that on the PA, you're next. What advice would you have for someone like me who's, I'm afraid of that coming? What can I do to put that off as long as possible?
Wow. So there is so much I want to say about that. So the first, I'll take the easiest one first. The first thing is, as you age, you have to rely less on brute force and more on tactics.
Okay.
And I'll give you for example. I am a very good fighter. I have been called the one-hit wonder because I will test a man's glass jaw anytime he deserves it. Okay. And I thoroughly expect him to hit me back because equal rights mean equal fights, right?
Okay.
So
you said it. I didn't. She said it. I didn't.
No, that's true. Women, you can't say, well, I want equal rights and I'm going to hit somebody. And then when they hit me back,
it's unfair. I'm
going to say cry foul, right? You can't do that. If you raise your hand to hit someone in anger, not in anger, defensively in my case, because they tried to harm you in some way, you have to expect that they're going to hit you back and not say, well, I can't hit her back. She's a woman. That's not going to happen, right? Or you can't expect that. If you want equal rights, you have to expect equal fights. Okay. Meaning, and conversely, it also means if you want the job, like I wanted to be an Army air assault medic, right? Rappelling out of helicopters and down buildings and off mountains. That means I needed to be able to carry someone who might outweigh me by more than 100 pounds, just like a male medic would. I can't say I want this job, but you have to lower the standards for me because I'm a woman, right? So I had to be strong and fit, just like the man, at the same standard, not a lower standard. Because that patient still weighs 100 pounds, whether you're a man or a woman medic, right? So just want to say that. Get off my social soapbox now. But you have to use tactics. Today, I probably wouldn't, if someone tried to grab me or carjack me. In the old days, I probably would have just punched them in the jaw, right? Knock them out. I don't know. My 200-pound bench press is more like 75 pounds now. Sure. So I might not do that, but I might sweep him off his legs and jump in my car and run, right? So you have to use tactics when you're a little bit older instead of just brute force.
Absolutely.
So that's one thing. But the other thing is, what I recommend to people is to have functional fitness. So back in the day when I was a competitive bodybuilder and powerlifter, I could bench press 200 pounds, squat 350, and deadlift 500, and I weighed 125 pounds. Well, I can't do that. I can lift 100 pounds now pretty routinely, which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
So functional, back in the day, I was training for bodybuilding. I was training to be a combat medic. Today, I train to have mobility, stability, flexibility, to be able to do tasks on my rural homestead, to be able to lift 100 pounds so I don't have to always call my husband when something heavy needs lifting. So I would recommend that as you age, and really for anyone, because life is dangerous. We live for most people, maybe not where I live, but where a lot of people live, if you're in a city or a suburb, you don't often live in a high trust society anymore.
Right, sure.
And danger is just around the corner. And so you have to be able to protect yourself, right? Sometimes the best strategy is to run, to flight. Sometimes it's to fight. Most often, though, a lot of us humans nowadays have been trained to freeze and pick up our phone or cower or fawn to beg someone not to harm you. And, that creates a lot of anxiety when that's your gut reaction. And that's your gut reaction. That when danger comes, you freeze or fawn. Please don't hit me, or, right? So that can create a lot of anxiety. But when you learn how to take care of yourself, to defend yourself, and you're strong enough to fight back, you're strong enough to run, your cardio is good enough to run, that reduces some anxiety. That takes you out of fight or flight mode because you walk around with confidence. I walk around with confidence all the time in the woods where there is nobody around. Yeah. And I don't even feel afraid of the animals because I know animal behavior, I know human behavior, and I know what I'm capable of.
Yeah. Well, don't ever take it for granted that you're safe, though, even when you're out in the woods. There's those deliverance types running around, too.
Well, I don't take it for granted that I'm ever safe. I just bank on the fact that I have the skills to save myself.
Yes. And those are good skills. And confidence. I've talked to a lot of people who have been through the system and have rehabilitated themselves. And, when you're walking through New York, for example, and you're looking up at the skyscrapers and you're taking pictures and everything, that you put a target on yourself. And I'm not saying anybody deserves it. Okay. When you're walking out to the car and you're staring at your phone, you are setting yourself up. And here again, I want to be very clear because the narrative is always, well, you're saying they deserve. No, I'm not saying they deserve. But when you are totally unaware, and we live in a society, I can tell you right now, where most people are totally unaware. They have no situational awareness at all. They don't move until their ass is on fire. And I don't think I can speak about that enough. How it's like we don't even know what's going on around us. That is not a good way to go through the forest or go through a bad neighborhood. It's not a good way to do either one. Am I right?
Absolutely, 100% right. So there's a difference between being able to turn on and turn off situational awareness and being stuck in go mode, being stuck in fight or flight. So what you and I are talking about is we're relaxed, we're enjoying life, but when we are in public, whether in the forest or in a big city, we're aware of our surroundings.
Yes.
We're engaging all of our senses, sight, smell, hearing, everything, maybe not taste. Mm-hmm. To keep ourselves safe. And the interesting conversation that I had with cybersecurity expert Robert Siciliano on my show, and I wanted to bring him on because there is an epidemic of anxiety and depression and just people who have a dysregulated nervous system stuck in fight or flight all the time. And it's destroying their overall health, starting in their as young as 6 years old. I have a nonprofit, and 11 out of 16 children aged 6 to 16 showed up at camp and told a counselor or myself that they were thinking of harming themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's not just adults, but children. This hopelessness, this vulnerability, this constant fear is everywhere.
Yeah.
But when, like you were saying, you're concerned as you age that you might become more vulnerable to people who want to prey on you. And the antidote to that is being physically, spiritually, emotionally strong so that you have all of the skills, like I was talking about, to survive no matter what happens. And just an example of that was just this winter, 5 days with no electricity. Oh, sorry. No, that was last year. Okay. Last year was 5 days with no electricity in the dead of winter. And of course we survived.
Yes.
Then this year we had 4 days of blizzards. While the river was rising at the same time, we were trapped by snow on one end of the property and the rising river on the other end of the property.
Yeah.
After that subsided, we had 2 inches shy of a record flood.
Wow.
We are resilient people. And so no matter what happens, we will survive. But people who are so reliant on the fact that the power will be there, and there will be food in the stores, and there will be someone to provide medical care if you need it, first aid if you need it, and you'll always have food, money for food, water, shelter. If you are reliant on that when and if the system fails, and my parents, who were children during the Great Depression and lived through 2 world wars, told me at some point in your adult life, you are going to experience a dramatic hardship. You need to know these skills that we're going to teach you so that you can survive no matter what.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't learn those things from their ancestors, like you learned from your grandfather, and I learned from my parents, and they learned from their parents.
Yes, that is so true. Let's round out the conversation with one important thing. You mentioned a caregiver, and I think caregivers are very much overlooked, especially the ones that are within the family, because we just kind of take it for granted. Well, the kid can take care of the parent. But in fact, it's not that easy. You know, I was a caregiver for a while when my mom became ill and eventually passed away, but you don't get a lot of rest. You're never really asleep. You're never really awake. You're always waiting for the next trip to the hospital or the next this or that. It's constant. And it can really take a real toll on you physically and mentally. What is some of the advice you have for caregivers?
Well, the first piece of advice is a frightening statistic that I hope every caregiver will take to heart. 50% of every caregiver in the developing world pass away before the person they were caring for. 50%. So if you're caregiving for a child, a parent, a partner, a friend, there's a 50% chance you won't survive, you won't outlive them. Yes. Unless you take back your health from chronic illness. Because here's the thing, when you're caregiving, you're under an incredible amount of stress, and you're not giving yourself the same attention that you're giving the person you're caring for. And then your health starts to decline, and then there's no one to care for you. The other frightening statistic is that 70% of everyone who can hear my voice right now will end up in a nursing home. But here's the powerful statistic. 90 to 98% of your health outcomes, whether you will age strong and vibrant or weak and in a nursing home, is 100% in your control. So the lifestyle choices that you make, the decision to take back your health from chronic illness, to put your doctor in the co-pilot seat and you in the pilot seat, those are the things that will move the needle so that you can age like my Aunt Liz, who passed away at home in her bed at 106, never with dementia, never needing a nursing home or walker or caregiver. Or you could be like my dad, who shared the same genes with her and his twin brother, who outlived him, who died of Alzheimer's.
Yes. We've been talking.
So I wanted to circle back to the caregiver point.
Absolutely.
So the advice I have to caregivers is you have to be willing to advocate for yourself. You have to be honest with yourself about how much and how long you can go on caregiving. You have to be open with the person you're giving care to, assuming they can understand you, because I've been on both sides of it. I've been a caregiver to parents, to partners, and then I've had a caregiver. And what I learned is my dad was super easy to caregive to. He wanted to try to do everything himself, as many things as he could. And that made life so much easier for me as the caregiver. He was kind and patient. He used his please and thank yous, right? And he was a joy to caregive to. My mother, on the other hand, was very demanding. Nothing was ever good enough. She complained all the time. She threw tantrums. She ordered me around like I was her servant and not her daughter who loves her. right? And she was extremely hard to caregive. And I think that was part of the reason my health declined. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that I want to say, if you are a person who a family member is giving you care, say please and thank you. Be kind, be patient and understanding. Know that they are a human being with their own health challenges too.
Yeah.
Do as much as you can for yourself as you possibly can.
I was just going to add, a lot of times when you're taking care of somebody who's chronically ill, especially when they get into that close to that end of life thing, they can become hostile just because of the fact that their body's shutting down and they become a different person altogether. I mean, and it's through no fault of their own. Sure. That's just what happens. And that can be a lot to deal with.
Right. Every caregiver needs someone to talk to. Every caregiver needs someone that they can speak to who won't judge them. For example, I had no one that I could say to who didn't pass judgment on me when I needed to say, my mother is exhausting me. She's verbally abusive.
Yeah.
And it is taxing me to the point where I don't think I can do this anymore. There was no one to say it to. There was no one to hand them off to because my siblings were like, I'm busy. I have my life. Mm-hmm. My oldest brother eventually did step up and he took over. And that was a great blessing. But then very shortly after that, I nearly lost my life because my own health failed.
Yes. Those are all very important points. So true. There's so much information that you can talk about. You are such a wealth of knowledge. And here again, you're on over 10 platforms, thousands of listeners. Is there any particular place you want to point to for people to come check you out?
Well, I just want to say the podcast is actually New Normal, Big Life, because you can create your new normal and make it a big life. And we focus on functional health and holistic wellness. You can find us on every platform where you can find a podcast. We are in audio and video on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, everywhere else in audio only. You can reach us at newnormalbiglifepodcast.com, and all of our socials have some variation of New Normal Big Life in the name. Okay. And we're on most platforms.
New Normal Big Life. I actually got here. I was reading the subtitle for some reason. New Normal Big Life. And we will have all that detailed in the show notes. Of course, social media, where I know you're on TikTok. That's where I found you. Where can people find you on social media?
Sure. On TikTok, we are New Normal Big Life Podcast. Instagram, New Normal Big Life Podcast. X, we're at nnbl.blog, and Facebook, New Normal Big Life Podcast. LinkedIn at Antoinette Berrafato, MBA, I think.
Yes. Antoinette Berrafato is the guest. New Normal Big Life Podcast. A lot going on there. Annette, thank you so much for coming on the program today. And there's so much I could talk to you about, but so little time. We can only hold people for so long, but I got to tell you, there's so much that people can get from listening to you. So appreciate you being on.
Thank you, Bill, for having me. I follow you on social media, and I've been wanting to have a conversation with you because all the conversations you have are just so rich that I was like, I'd love to be on the mic with Bill, and here I am. So thank you for that.
And you can come back anytime you want. All you got to do is say, hey, Bill, I want to come on. Okay, cool. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast wherever you find podcasts. We have over a 10-year history now, so you can find us. And I'm going to say social media. For right now, anyway, my social media home is probably still X, which is the former Twitter, at Billy Dees. I've always kind of felt that the real-time nature, the trending topics, all that type of thing on X still suits podcasting very well, although all the platforms have changed. I mean, that could be a whole topic of a podcast right there. The algorithms now are completely different than what they were before. But through it all, X is still kind of the place to be. Thank you so much for listening to our program today. I hope you will check us out again very, very soon. Thank you. I'm Billy Dees and host of the self-titled podcast, The Billy Dees Podcast. We are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast featuring authors and creators talking about their craft, advocates for community issues, and myself and an array of co-hosts discussing current events. There's no partisan ranting and raving going on here, just great content. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast on your favorite platform and on Twitter at Billy Dees. Thank you, and I hope you listen in.